Today is day 5 for the Come Follow Me study for this week, January 20th through the 26th. The hearts of the children shall turn to their fathers. Doctrine and Covenants 2, Joseph Smith History 1, 27 through 65. Friday, January 24th, 2025, Joseph Smith History 1, 54 through 58. Moroni continues to instruct the prophet. Lucy Mack Smith said, when Joseph came in that evening, he told the whole family all that he had made known to his father in the field, and also of finding the record, as well as what passed between him and the angel while he was at the place where the plates were deposited. We sat up very late and listened attentively to all he had to say to us, but his mind had been so exercised that he became very much fatigued. When Alvin saw this, he said, Now, brother, let us go to bed. We will get up early in the morning and go to work, so as to finish our day's labor by an hour before sunset. And if mother will get our suppers early, we will then have a fine long evening and all sit down and hear you talk. The next day we worked with great ambition and were ready by sunset to give our whole attention to the discourse of my son, pertaining to the obtaining of the plates, the goodness of God, his knowledge and power, our own liability to error and transgression, and the great salvation that lay before the faithful. Now, he said, Father and mother, the angel of the Lord says that we must be careful not to proclaim these things or to mention them abroad, for we do not any of us know the weakness of the world, which is so sinful, that when we get the plates, they will want to kill us for the sake of the gold, if they know we have them. And as soon as they find that we pretend to have any such thing, our names will be cast out as evil, and we shall be scoffed at, and all names of evil spoken concerning us. This astonished us very much, and we wondered in our hearts how these things could be. Why would anyone have a disposition to take our lives merely for a thing like this? But he continued, If we are wise and prudent in that which is revealed to us, God is able to make all things known to us. Do you believe it? He said to his father. Why, yes, certainly, answered Mr. Smith. He has all power and wisdom, knowledge and understanding, and of course can teach us all things if we are worthy, and we will try to live in such a way as to deserve the favor of God, that he may be pleased to instruct from day to day. From this time forth Joseph continued to receive instructions from time to time, and every evening we gathered our children together and gave our time up to the discussion of those things which he instructed to us. I think that we presented the most peculiar aspect of any family that ever lived upon the earth, all seated in a circle, father, mother, sons, and daughters, listening in breathless anxiety to the religious teachings of a boy 18 years of age, who had never read the Bible through by course in his life. For Joseph was less inclined to the study of books than any child we had, but much more given to reflection and deep study. We were convinced that God was about to bring to light something that we might stay our minds upon, something that would give us a more perfect knowledge of the plan of salvation and the redemption of the human family than anything which had been taught us heretofore. And we rejoiced in it with exceedingly great joy. The sweetest union and happiness pervaded our house. No jar nor discord disturbed our peace, and tranquillity reigned in our midst. Joseph Smith History 154. Accordingly, as I had been commanded, I went at the end of each year, and at each time I found the same messenger there, and received instruction and intelligence from him at each of our interviews, respecting what the Lord was going to do, and how and in what manner his kingdom was to be conducted in the last days. Between 1823, when Joseph first saw the plates, and 1827, when he was allowed to take them from the hill, Joseph received additional heavenly instruction. Lucy Mack Smith's history says that during this time Joseph continued to receive instructions from the Lord. Lucy Mack Smith said the angel bade Joseph come to this place every year, at the same time of the year, and he would meet him there and give him further instructions. President John Taylor said, when Joseph Smith was raised up as a prophet of God, Mormon, Moroni, Nephi, and others of the ancient prophets who formerly lived on this continent, and Peter and John and others who lived on the Asiatic continent, came to him and communicated to him certain principles pertaining to the gospel of the Son of God. Joseph Smith's mother also wrote, during our evening conversations, Joseph would occasionally give us some of the most amusing recitals that could be imagined. He would describe the ancient inhabitants of this continent, their dress, mode of traveling, and the angels upon which they rode, their cities and their buildings. With every particular, he would describe their mode of warfare, as also their religious worship. This he would do with as much ease, seemingly, as if he had spent his whole life with them. Significant events. 1820 to 1823, young Joseph matured while suffering persecution and waiting for further instructions from the Lord. September 21st through 22nd, 1823, Moroni first appeared to Joseph Smith. November 19th, 1823, Joseph Smith's elder brother, Alvin, died. 1824 to 1827, Joseph Smith made 4 annual visits to the hill where the gold plates were buried. Talk about what God called Joseph Smith to do, and how we are blessed as a result. For example, how have we been blessed because Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon? How has his work helped us come closer to Heavenly Father in Jesus Christ? Joseph Smith marries Emma Hale. He receives the gold plates from Moroni and translates some of the characters. Martin Harris shows the characters in translation to Professor Anthon, who says, "I cannot read a sealed book." Verses 55 through 65. Alvin dies. Joseph Smith History 1:55 to 56. As my father's worldly circumstances were very limited, we were under the necessity of laboring with our hands, hiring out by day's work and otherwise, as we could get opportunity. Sometimes we were at home, and sometimes abroad, and by continuous labor were enabled to get a comfortable maintenance. In the year 1823, my father's family met with a great affliction by the death of my eldest brother Alvin. Lucy Mack Smith said, on the 15th of November, 1823, about 10 o'clock in the morning, Alvin was taken very sick with the bilious colic. He came to the house in great distress and requested his father to go immediately for a physician, which he accordingly did. But the doctor who generally attended upon our family being absent, Mr. Smith was compelled to go further than he expected. However, he found in the next village one Dr. Greenwood, who, when he came, immediately administered a heavy dose of calomel to the patient, although he objected much against it. This calomel lodged in his stomach, and all the powerful medicine which was afterwards prescribed by skillful physicians could not remove it. On the 3rd day of his sickness, Dr. McIntyre, the favorite of the family and a man of great skill and experience, was brought, and with him 4 other professors of medicine. But all their exertions were of no avail, just as Alvin had declared would be the case. He said, "The calomel is still lodged in the same place, and you cannot move it. Consequently, it must take my life." He then called Hiram to him and said, "Hiram, I must die, and now I want to say a few words to you that you must remember. I have done all that I could do to make our dear parents comfortable. I now want you to go on and finish the house and take care of them in their old age, and do not let them work hard any more." But to Joseph he said, "Joseph, I am going to die now. The distress which I suffer and the sensations that I have tell me my time is very short. I want you to be a good boy and do everything that lies in your power to obtain the record. Be faithful in receiving instruction and in keeping every commandment that is given you. Your brother Alvin must now leave you, but remember the example which he has set for you, and set a good example for the children that are younger than you. Always be kind to father and mother." He then asked me to take his little sister Lucy up and bring her to him, for he wished to see her. This child was the youngest of the family, and he was extremely fond of her, and was of the habit of taking her up and caressing her, which naturally attached her to him. She could not then talk plainly, and always called her brother Amby. I went to her and said, "Lucy, Amby wants to see you." At this she started out of her sleep and screamed out, "Oh, Amby, Amby!" We took her to him, and she sprang from my arms and caught him round the neck and cried out, "Oh, my Amby!" and kissed him again and again. To Lucy he said, "You must be the best girl in the world and take care of mother. You can't have your Amby any more. Amby is going away. He must leave little Lucy." He then kissed her and said, "Take her away. I think my breath offends her." We took hold of the child, but she clenched hold of him with such a desperate grasp that it was very difficult to disengage her hands. As I turned with the child, Alvin said, "Father, mother, brothers, sisters, farewell. I can now breathe out my life as calmly as a clock," and immediately closed his eyes in death. The child still cried to go back to Alvin. One present said to her, "Alvin is gone. An angel has taken his spirit to heaven." When the babe heard this, she renewed her cries, and as I bent over his corpse with her in my arms, she again threw her arms around him and kissed him repeatedly, screaming as before. And until the body was taken from the house, she continued constantly crying and showing much manifestation of affection mingled with terror at the scene before her, as is seldom witnessed in a child. This harrowed up our feelings almost to distraction. For Alvin was a youth of singular goodness and disposition, kind and amiable manners, so much so that lamentation and mourning filled the whole neighborhood where we lived, and of course more than usual grief filled the hearts of those from whose immediate circle he was taken, those who felt and saw the effects of his nobleness and generosity every hour of his existence. Thus was our happiness blasted in a moment. When we least expected the blow, it came upon us. The poisoned shaft entered our very heart's core and diffused to deadly effect throughout our veins. We were for a time almost swallowed up in grief, so much so that it seemed impossible for us to interest ourselves at all about the concerns of life. The feeling of every heart was to make speedy preparation to follow him who had been too much the idol of our hearts. And then, if it pleased God to take us also, we would receive the call as a favor at his hands from whom it came. Alvin had ever manifested a greater zeal and anxiety, if it were possible, than any of the rest with regard to the record which he had shown to Joseph, and he always showed the most intense interest concerning the matter. With this before our minds, we could not endure to hear or say one word upon that subject, for the moment that Joseph spoke of the record, it would immediately bring Alvin to our minds, with all his kindness, his affection, his zeal and piety.
Some sort of internal blockage. What do we do to treat it? I'm sorry. I've done everything I know how to do.
Take care of mother and father. Take care of each other. Joseph, do everything you can to obtain the record. Everything.
God has given travail to the sons of men, for dust we are, and unto dust shall we return. Perhaps God is trying to warn you, Joseph. Alvin is lost. But there is still hope for you. Forget these foolish notions.
Alvin was a faithful and serious young man, and Joseph idolized him. Joseph saw in him a guileless person who lived an upright life. Alvin loved Joseph too, and was greatly interested in the sacred record. As death neared, he counseled Joseph, "I want you to be a good boy and do everything that lies in your power to obtain the record. Be faithful in receiving instruction and in keeping every commandment that is given you." Joseph learned by revelation years later that Alvin was an heir to the celestial kingdom. Joseph Smith History 156 continued. In the month of October 1825, I hired an old gentleman by the name of Josiah Stoll, who lived in Chenango County, state of New York. He had heard something of a silver mine having been opened by the Spaniards in Harmony, Susquehanna County, state of Pennsylvania, and had previous to my hiring to him been digging in order, if possible, to discover the mine. After I went to live with him, he took me with the rest of his hands to dig for the silver mine, at which I continued to work for nearly a month, without success in our undertaking, and finally I prevailed with the old gentleman to cease digging after it. Hence arose the very prevalent story of my having been a money digger. Concerning Joseph's money digging for Josiah Stoll, Joseph's mother, Lucy Mack Smith, wrote the following in her history. A man by the name of Josiah Stoll came from Chenango County, New York, to get Joseph to assist him in digging for a silver mine. He came for Joseph from having heard that he was in possession of certain means by which he could discern things that could not be seen by the natural eye. Joseph endeavored to divert him from his vain project, but he was inflexible and offered high wages to such as would dig for him, and was still very anxious to have Joseph work for him. Consequently, he, Joseph, returned with the old gentleman besides several others who were picked up in the neighborhood, and commenced digging. After laboring about a month without success, Joseph prevailed on his employer to cease his operations. It was from this circumstance, namely working by the month at digging for a silver mine, that the very prevalent story arose of his, Joseph's, having been a money digger. President Brigham Young said one of the first objections that was urged against Joseph Smith was that he was a money digger, and now the digging of gold is considered an honorable and praiseworthy employment. They are hunting for gold all over the country, doing the very thing which they condemned in him. Joseph Smith marries Emma Hale. Joseph Smith History 157. During the time that I was thus employed, I was put to board with a Mr. Isaac Hale of that place. It was there I first saw my wife, his daughter, Emma Hale. On the 18th of January, 1827, we were married while I was yet employed in the service of Mr. Stoll. Joseph Smith's mother, Lucy Mack Smith, wrote, while Joseph was laboring for Mr. Stoll, he boarded a short time with Isaac Hale, at which interval he, Joseph, became acquainted with his daughter, Miss Emma Hale, and immediately commenced paying his addresses to her, and at a subsequent period married her. Joseph called my husband and myself aside and said, "I have been very lonely ever since Alvin died, and I have concluded to get married, and if you have no objections, Miss Emma Hale would be my choice before any other woman I have ever seen." We were pleased with his selection, and not only gave our consent to his marrying her, but requested that he should bring her home with him and live with us. Emma was born in Harmony on July 10th, 1804. She is reported to have been a beautiful woman, above average in size, dignified in body, with bewitching dark eyes and raven hair. She was an attractive personality, intelligent and capable. For 1 year, she attended an academy for girls, which she received training in social behavior. It was said of her that she never used slang and was very particular about her grammar and choice of words. She had the reputation of being a meticulous housekeeper and an excellent cook. She, like her mother, was a member of the Methodist Church, had a good singing voice, and sang in the village choir. Joseph Smith History 158. Owing to my continuing to assert that I had seen a vision, persecution still followed me, and my wife's father's family were very much opposed to our being married. I was therefore under the necessity of taking her elsewhere. So we went and were married at the house of Squire Tarbill in South Bainbridge, Chenango County, New York. Immediately after my marriage, I left Mr. Stoll's and went to my father's and farmed with him that season.